There are moments in history when the real horror wasn't written in blood, but in silence. The kind of silence that follows a punishment so calculated, so invisible, that no one could even explain how they were being destroyed. It began with whispers inside a palace, where fear walked before every servant. A place ruled by a king who understood something far darker than violence. He knew how to break people without ever laying a hand on them. And on the night his most loyal advisor disappeared without a sound, the palace learned exactly what that meant. Before we dive deeper, make sure to subscribe. This channel brings you stories the history books never dared to tell. People today imagine ancient kings as brutal warriors. But this story isn't about blades or battles. It's about a ruler who perfected a different kind of cruelty, a psychological weapon so effective that his victims often begged for punishment just so the suffering would make sense. The king had discovered the one truth no one wanted to admit. Humans fear the unknown far more than pain, and he used that fear as his throne. Everything began with a simple rule. When someone disobeyed, he never reacted. No anger, no threats, no decree. He simply looked at them. Then days passed. Nothing happened. Or at least, nothing obvious. But the palace had already begun its work. Servants avoided the person. Guards stopped speaking to them. Meals arrived late or cold, or not at all. Messages never reached their destination. Every mistake they didn't make was suddenly blamed on them. And by the fourth day, the victim always realized the truth. The king had chosen them. But for what? They never knew. And that was the genius of his cruelty. Because when punishment is visible, the mind fights it. But when the threat is invisible, the mind destroys itself. People stopped sleeping. They twitched at every sound. They apologized constantly for actions they never took. Some collapsed. Some confessed to crimes no one had accused them of. And some simply broke, their will dissolving under the weight of not knowing. This system of psychological punishment was so effective that the king didn't have to lift a finger. Fear did his ruling for him. But what happened next was far worse. One evening, a young woman named Eris, known for her calm voice and steady mind, made the mistake of telling another servant that she believed the king's punishments were not magical or divine, but deliberate. Someone overheard. Someone repeated it. And by sunrise, the king knew, yet he said nothing. Eris expected anger, exile, or execution, but none came. Instead, the palace around her began to shift, quietly, like shadows learning to breathe. At first, small things. Her laundry returned, soaked instead of dry. Her sleeping mat was moved. The water jars she carried suddenly felt heavier, as if filled beyond capacity. Then the staring began. Not hostile, not overt, just eyes that lingered a second too long, then a second more. She would enter a room and the conversations would stop, not dramatically, simply with a soft, unnatural pause. She felt her identity peeling away, replaced by something the palace wanted her to become. She tried to stay strong. She repeated to herself, "It's only fear, not fate." But the king understood human psychology better than any scholar. Fear grows fastest when fed slowly. If you're still watching, you're exactly the kind of person this channel was made for. So hit that subscribe button and stay with us for more chilling stories. Now the palace moved into the second phase of punishment, isolation. Eris noticed that her tasks kept changing. One day she was polishing brass, the next sweeping corridors, the next assisting in the gardens. There was a purpose to this. When you constantly change someone's environment, their brain loses the comfort of routine. The mind becomes unanchored, desperate for stability. And desperation makes obedience almost automatic. But the king wasn't finished. He now activated what we would call, today, a suspense release cycle. Meaning, just when she felt she understood the new pattern, he broke it. After 3 days of silence, a guard suddenly approached her with a smile. "The king wishes you well," he said. Nothing else, then walked away. That tiny moment of hope shook her harder than the fear had. Hope is the most dangerous weapon when used by a master manipulator. Because when you give someone hope, you raise them high enough that the fall hurts more. That night, one of the palace cooks left a warm meal outside her room, as if trying to show kindness. The next morning, the meal had been replaced with a cold bowl of ashes. Eris broke. She tried to confront the king, not with rebellion, but with pleading. She bowed, voice trembling, saying, "If I have offended you, I beg forgiveness. Just tell me my crime." But the king only looked at her with calm, unreadable eyes and said, "If you do not know, then it must not have been important." And that was when she understood the twisted brilliance of his system. The punishment worked because it never had a reason. Humans need meaning, even in suffering. Take the meaning away, and the suffering becomes infinite. The palace didn't just punish the body, it dismantled the identity. Except the king made one mistake. Eris was not like the others. Instead of collapsing quietly, she started observing the palace like a scientist studying an illness. She realized every act of cruelty followed a pattern: confusion, isolation, hope, withdrawal, silence. It wasn't divine justice, it was psychological engineering. She began speaking quietly to others, telling them the truth. He can only control you if you believe the punishment is real. Some listened, most didn't. But one guard did, and that was enough. Because a system built on collective fear collapses the moment even a single person stops believing in it. And here is where everything changed. One morning, the king awoke to find the palace unnaturally quiet. Servants moved normally, guards stood normally, no one avoided each other. The invisible machinery of his rule fear had stopped. Panic flickered in his eyes for the first time. Because power built on silence cannot survive the sound of people thinking again. When he summoned Eris, expecting her to come trembling, she walked in steady and unbroken. And when she spoke, she didn't beg. She said 12 words that ended the most sophisticated psychological punishment system of the ancient world. "Your power ends the moment we stop imagining the pain you promise." Those words spread through the palace like sunlight slipping under a locked door. And within days, the king's greatest weapon, fear, became useless. People obeyed him only out of duty, not terror. And for a man who ruled minds instead of armies, that was the deepest defeat imaginable. The final truth, the climax, comes here. The king's punishments had never been supernatural, never inevitable, never unstoppable. They worked only because people believed they were trapped. And the moment they stopped believing, the invisible punishment vanished like smoke in wind. But the palace remembered, and history remembered. Not the king's name, but the lesson he accidentally taught. The strongest chains are not made of iron, they're made of imagination. And the moment you understand that, no king, no ruler, no invisible threat can ever control you again. If you want more stories like this, make sure to like the video, share it, and subscribe. This helps the channel grow and lets us bring you even deeper stories.